Chapter 19. Predictably, the Sanders made a gigantic to-do over the final night's celebrations. First, Jim told everyone to change into the couple's color-coded Western wear he and Alice provided. Hats, kerchiefs, and boots for all, neatly stacked on the large coffee table in the center of the room. Once everyone was ridiculously attired, Bill, who'd steadfastly refused to change, stood out in his khakis and golf shirt, as did Marci in her lonely teal hat. Gathered in a circle on the patio, the group toasted their last evening together with Jim dropping broad hints about what lay ahead, like, "You're going to be amazed when you see your ride," and "We've been saving this surprise. I can barely wait to see everyone's faces." Amber Teasley, already a bit drunk from slamming 3 cocktails in less than 20 minutes, pulled a plastic baggie from her pocket and held it aloft, jiggling 8 large white and brown speckled pills nestled inside, while holding her other hand up to silence everyone. "I know this is a bit crazy, but I thought, what the hell? I mean, everyone can say no. It's just a little Molly, ecstasy." She smiled at her husband Greg, who chimed in. "I told her this was crazy. We aren't in college anymore, but she just wouldn't take no for an answer. She said what happens in the Pleistocene stays in the Pleistocene, right?" Everyone shifted awkwardly, taking nervous swigs of their drinks while Amber shook out 2 oval pills from the baggie and swallowed one dramatically, chasing it with her vodka tonic. Greg pulled a pill from the baggie, tossing it into his mouth, offering the bag to the Sanders. Alice impulsively reached over, grabbing the pill from Amber's outstretched hand, popping it into her mouth. She looked defiantly to Jim, who fished a pill out and did likewise, his gaze never leaving hers. "Why not?" Bill shrugged, grabbing 2, then handing one to Marci as Brian and Susie Whitmore in matching red hats followed suit. "This has just been a magical weekend, and we really dig everyone here, so please enjoy our compliments. Let's get loose, goose," Amber rambled, shouting, "Woohoo!" while pumping both of her arms excitedly. Marci found herself woohooing as well, everyone nervous about the effects of the pills they had so impulsively just consumed. They ambled chattily to the stables where, to everyone's complete and total awe, Esteban stepped forward, holding the leather leads of 4 very long, elephant-sized tusked ferrets, shuffling excitedly on their 4-toed feet, each sporting great decorative saddles, the types you'd find on camels at the fair, with humped seats for 2, and a tasseled curtain carriage that swayed as the ferrets undulated forward like giant centipedes. Esteban ran in front of the couples, providing a set of steps for the guests to board their strange transport to the big surprise Jim had arranged in the verdant valley nearby. Then, on Esteban's cue of "Andale," the ferrets lurched forward, and the couple scrambled to hang on to their saddles. Susie Whitmore screamed, clutching her hat as the ferrets lumbered down the beaten path behind Esteban, kicking his heels into the ribs of his black horse, Big Meloria, clicking his teeth to lead the ferrets along. The Teasleys giggled woozily as they moved and swayed in their saddle for 2. "We could have just taken the dune buggies," Jim shouted over the lead ferret's snickers. "But I thought, this is the way to go, right? This is the way to really finish up a great weekend, yeah? Lead the way, Esteban. Olé!" Marci swayed along, lulled by the gait of the ferret as the hallucinogens started to take effect, neon tracers whipping through the forest undergrowth like strings of light, dazzling swishes of colors from the giant insects buzzing about, and the dainty phosphorescent flowers studding their path, squeaking like mice as the ferrets clomped over them. Bill heard music in the wind and giggled deliriously. Marci started to laugh too. They rode alongside the Teasley's ferret, and Amber reached her hand out to brush Marci's outstretched fingertips. "I love you," Amber slurred as they lost contact, the Teasley's ferret trundling ahead. The group became rambunctious as they debarked, howling and hooting into the night as the ecstasy coursed through their veins like liquid candy. Esteban found himself watching Susie Whitmore as the group unpacked. Her glossy black hair, a stark contrast to the evil Meloria's silken blonde tresses, though not to be confused with his horse Big Meloria's beautiful midnight mane. Jim tossed picnic blankets out onto the mossy ground of the valley, while Alice spilled wine into glasses for the bacchanal, she joked, efficiently sliding cheese and fruit platters from a cooler, music suddenly pouring from a portable speaker. Esteban watched from the shadows of the nearby copse of trees, Big Meloria and the ferrets contentedly munching on lichen in the moonlight. He had no idea what hallucinogen these odd future people had taken, nor did he care, he thought, carefully loading his pistol and laying it to his side. He himself partook of nothing but whiskey and tobacco, sometimes the Chinese marijuana, and the occasional packet of cocaine from La Pharmacia, but only when medically necessary. In the near distance, the women danced together, a maypole of imbalanced gyrations and kicks. A very drunk Amber and a buzzed Alice pulling Susie and the eternally reluctant Marci to their feet, twirling seductively around the two unsteady women in the center. Even Marci rather robotically twisted and turned, placing her teal cowboy hat on Bill's head, dancing just out of his reach. The pink of the volcano in the night sky glowed psychedelically as everyone moved around one another, touching and laughing. Jim pulled a ukulele out and began to pick a tune. At midnight, Jim signaled Esteban with a clap, and as planned, a large packet of fireworks was produced from a canvas and leather tote. With dramatic flourish, Jim set off one firework after another into the dark, primitive sky. The humanoids lurking nearby were apoplectic, racing for their burrows, certain the end of the world was nigh. Marci and Bill held hands, sitting on their picnic blanket, watching Jim comically race from one Roman candle to the next, burning his hands repeatedly on his lighter, tripping over rocks in his haste. Even sober Esteban chuckled from the dark perimeter. Esteban heard a shuffling noise in the dark shadows and reached for his gun as Susie stumbled in front of him, blocking his seated view of the fireworks. He snuffed out his cigarillo as the intoxicated vixen tilted her red hat towards the jungle beyond the valley and lifted her eyebrows provocatively. Though his experience was limited with today's modern woman, Esteban still recognized an invitation when he saw one and immediately followed her into the darkness, casting one weary glance over a muscled shoulder at her oblivious husband Brian, currently lolling about on a picnic blanket with 3 slices of Munster cheese on his face, waving a salami about in each hand like batons. Bill was suddenly inspired to pick Marci a bouquet of the singing blue daisies he'd noticed littering the valley floor, and began scouring the ground, though the flowers kept moving just out of his reach as he moved towards them. He followed them to the tree line, crawling carefully along the floor of the valley, humming along with the very vocal flowers before smacking his head on a tree in his path. "Marci?" he called out, crawling to his feet, sensing another's presence. He saw a flash of color around a tree to his left and lurched towards it, his hands in front of him in the dark. Aha, he thought. She was making an effort after all. First the drugs, now this. Who was his wife tonight? He saw her again, standing coquettishly at the base of the tree directly ahead of him, and he sauntered suavely towards her. At least, this is what he thought he was doing. The reality was really more of a listing robotic gait, like a mummy in a scary movie. He took her hands, pulling her into a passionate embrace. "You smell so wonderful," he murmured into her neck, raining kisses across her exposed shoulders. She couldn't believe her luck. She had followed them this evening, watching from a distance, witnessing the crazy antics of these creatures in the valley, the wasted food, the weird jerky movements, the totem box that filled the valley with the sounds of dying beasts and crying children. Then she saw her battleman, foraging for maggots or worms in the dirt of the jungle floor. He must have been very hungry. Where was his woman? In the end, he had come to her. As she stood watching him, wanting so badly to touch him, he had reached out to her, suffocating her with his mouth, though she had not struggled, because she wanted to touch him too. He made noise to her in a soft voice. He touched her shoulders. He put his tongue on her lips. She found this interesting and stood still as he performed a variety of foreign acts upon her. Consumed with sudden passion for his wife, Bill made love to her, wildly, then gently, unable to recall it ever being like this before. Rolling off of her sweat-slicked body onto his back as he stared up at the stars panting, Bill could hear their party's voices from the valley nearby. Breathing deeply, satisfied, he closed his eyes to rest. "Bill!" he heard Marci shout from afar. His eyes snapped open. "Bill! Bill! Where are you, Bill?" He heard Jim, Alice, and Susie join the calls. Looking up to the stars, he was surprised to feel the early morning sun filtering down on his face, the leaves splattering him in dappled shadows. He looked to his side for Marci, but she was gone. Shaking his aching head to clear it, he pushed himself up, noting with a start that although he still wore his golf shirt and Marci's teal hat from the night before, he was quite bottomless. Just as the entire party, the Sanders, the Whitmores, the Teasleys, his own wife, and even Esteban, stumbled upon him as he sat there on the jungle floor, his pale, nude legs splayed in front of him like a child in a bed made of wet, rotting leaves. "There you are," Jim cried gratefully. "Thank God, Bill. You had us all in a fright." Bill, covering his privates with his hands, smiled tremulously up at the group, still rather discombobulated. "We've been looking for you for almost an hour," Alice lectured peevishly. "We were all very worried about you." Marci's words trailed off as she noted Bill's current state of undress with a grimace. Greg, a fourth-grade teacher, better versed at disarming embarrassing situations, cleared his throat, clapping his hands together while directing the couples back to the ferrets. "All right, show's over. Let's get a move on." Everyone filed back to the valley, giving Bill small, pitying looks as they turned away. Bill hung back, unsure how to proceed and quite unwilling to walk in front of the group with his bare backside fully exposed. Alice, noting Bill's missing pants, good-naturedly pulled her small red windbreaker off and handed it to him. "Quite a fucking night, huh? That shit got crazy." Jim elbowed Bill as Bill fit the small windbreaker around his waist, settling for wearing it like an apron, with his ass still exposed in the back and his testicles barely concealed in the front, hospital gown style. As they rode their swaying giant ferrets in the humid morning air back to the vacation home, Bill fidgeted to keep his hairy posterior out of the open wind, shifting uncomfortably in his seat in an effort to avoid his testicles sticking to the warm leather of the saddle. Both he and Marci were quiet and hungover. "Thanks for last night." Bill reached for Marci's hand, admitting, "I really didn't expect, you know." Marci recoiled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You know," Bill teased with a laugh, wiggling his eyebrows. The Teasley's ferret pulled alongside their own. "Woohoo!" Amber shouted obnoxiously, giving Bill a thumbs up. "Well, you did try to touch Alice's ass several times, and then I caught you making out with a tree before you went off to piss and never came back. So you were obviously out of your mind. Who knows what you knowed," she remarked, before turning away from Bill and ignoring him the rest of the ride. After a quick brunch at the cabin, the party returned to Plainview as planned. Boom, whoosh. The Whitmores and the Teasleys thanked the Sanders effusively, and everyone gave each other little European air kisses as they parted with promises to do it again soon. Such fun was had by all.